following program is a production of the Barroom Network and intended for all audiences.
What would your message be to young women that are just getting started or want to get started in sports broadcasting?
Was there anyone that you worked with early on or maybe you built a bond with that kind of helped usher you in as a young broadcaster?
Was there ever an initial comment or situation from a coworker that first struck you that you might not be getting viewed in the same light as everyone else?
Social media has clearly created a new medium for people to be cruel in the matter of seconds. Do you feel that has made it more difficult for women, or is it simply just bringing to light the ignorance that has always been there anyway?
What inspired you to get into sportscasting?
Pass the Mic with Alyssa Barbieri and John Buffone.
Hello and welcome everyone to the inaugural episode of Pass the Mic, a show dedicated to spotlighting female voices in sports media. I'm John Buffone, and alongside me is my co-host, co-producer, and my friend Alyssa Barbieri. Alyssa, of course, is the managing editor over at Bears Wire and the brains behind our Chicago Bears podcast, Buffone 55. Alyssa, how you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm really excited for us to finally, share this show with everybody and to bring in our incredible first guest.
Yeah, this has been a long time coming. We've been doing a lot of work on this, deciding how we wanted to go about this. And I'm just incredibly honored to be a part of this show with you because, it is our inaugural episode and there's a lot of jitters we're going to work out. But just for our listeners, can you tell them what this show is all about and what our goal is?
Absolutely, John. So Pass the Mic is all about empowering female voices in sports media. For the past decade, I've written about sports, covering everything from college to Major League Baseball and now the NFL with the Bears, and obviously co-hosting Buffone 55 with you for the last couple of years. It's a passion of mine. I love doing it, and I've worked with some amazing people along the way. But one thing that I have had to deal with my time as a sports writer are sexist attacks through comments and social media. Though most of my followers are great, there's still a large number of people that can't get past the fact that I'm a woman talking about sports. There are so many talented women in sports media today, and all too often they're criticized for how they look, what they wear, or they're just not taken seriously simply because they're female. This show will not only spotlight talented women, it will bring light to the struggle they went through to get to where they are today.
Absolutely. And I know a lot of our listeners are from the Chicago area, but we're going to be talking to women across the country who are experts in a number of sports. I mean, sometimes it'll be someone from a big market, and other times it'll be a more regional guest, because no matter where a woman works or what level they're currently at in their career, their story is important to tell. And we hope that we can offer you, the listeners, a different perspective that you might not have had before you listened to this show.
That's right, John, and we're so lucky to start this show with such an amazing guest. If you are from the Chicago area, her name will be very familiar. She is a 12-time Emmy-winning sportscaster, working as a sports talk host with 670 The Score and ESPN 1000 in Chicago, and has a 2-decade career with NBC5 in the Windy City. We now welcome Peggy Kusinski to Pass the Mic. Peggy, thank you so much for joining us on our maiden voyage.
I'm so happy to be with you guys. Listen, I love what you guys are doing. And what blows my mind is that this is the year 2020. And women started doing sports television back in the 50s and 60s, which is shocking. And they were sports writers. And here we are almost 70 years later, and we're still trying to bang it over people's head that this is not a big deal. Your grandmothers, your mothers, your sisters, your cousins, your girlfriends, and your wives play sports, talk sports, and love sports. Get over it. It's okay for us all to share in our love of sports together.
Reach. I am slow clapping for you right now if it was not holding a microphone. So, Peggy, I think the first question that we should ask is, what inspired you to get into sportscasting? Everyone usually has a different story of when they got the call, so to speak. So what was yours?
I was an all-state basketball player. I think I was the second team all-state in Illinois played for Resurrection High School on the northwest side of Chicago. I'm one of 10 children. I have 7 brothers. And really, like, all I knew was sports. Like, I played sports. I was obsessed with sports. I played basketball and volleyball and softball. And I got to college and thought that, I had never heard of sports broadcasting for women. So what I did was I went into communications, speech, and acting. And I thought, oh, this is fine. This is what I'll do. This is great. And I was walking around the communications building at Southern Illinois University in Carbondale. And I saw this bulletin board where it's, like job openings and stuff. And there was like audition for a radio show, audition for the campus television show, audition for campus news. Do you do weather, sports, or news? And I thought, oh my gosh, they actually do this? So I thought, okay, what do I have to do? What kind of experience do I need to be able to do this? The same time, around this time, my freshman year, I walked into my brother's apartment in Carbondale on the campus of SIU. And he and like 4 friends, I don't know, 4 or 5 friends, they're sitting there glued to the TV. When I walked in the door, nobody turned around. Nobody was like, oh, hey, Peg. They were all just glued to this TV. And so I kind of walked in, I looked at the TV, and I went and got something to drink out of the refrigerator, and I came back, and I'm like, what are you guys watching? And they're like, it's this news station called ESPN, and it's all sports. And I was like, what do you mean it's all sports? They're like, well, it's like a newscast, but it's all sports. So this was 1981. And I looked at them, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, ESPN is 3 years old at that point, or 4 years old, something like that. So I looked at the TV screen, and these guys were glued. They were not going to like turn and make any conversation. And there was a woman on the set, and it was Gail Gardner. And I looked and I said, wait. I go, this is like a newscast, but it's all sports? They're like, yeah, it's all sports. And I saw her, and I thought, oh my God, I did not know this was something that was possible. And from that moment on, I'm like, that's it. I transferred out of the communications, speech and drama. I went into the broadcasting department and started taking all the radio, television classes and volunteering for everything possible. And I thought, that's what I want to do. I want to be a sportscaster. And everyone back then in 1981, they were all laughing. They were like, okay, Peg. It was like pat the dog. Okay, good girl. That's a good idea. I was like, well, no, that's what I'm going to do. And so I majored in radio and television broadcasting with a specialty in sports. And then I minored in athletic coaching and sports psychology. And I got to tell you, the athletic coaching and sports psychology is probably what did me more good than the broadcasting major, because having an insight into the people I was covering and the who and the why and the where and the how you do things was way more important than can you speak on camera? Because, now, how many years later, 40 years later almost, it's everyone can speak on camera because everyone has a cell phone, and everyone can do a selfie, and everyone can do FaceTime. So that was how I started, and I was in love with it. It wasn't easy. It was all guys, and I did get to go cover, the SIU Saluki football team went to the 1AA championship. I didn't cover football. I covered women's softball and women's basketball and women's volleyball. I covered all the sports none of the guys wanted to cover. But when you do that, you learn how to tell a story. You learn the machinations behind a team and the makeup with the coaches and everything like that. And it totally made me a much better prepared reporter when I left college.
Peggy, that's an incredible story of just how everything kind of fell into place. And that kind of just, just made something spark in my brain. I think a lot of broadcasters and writers usually have someone they look up to when they're first getting into their career. And admittedly, it might be a little easier for men getting into the business simply because there are more men in the industry. So was there anyone that you worked with early on, or maybe you built a bond with, that kind of helped usher you in as a young broadcaster?
Oh, that's a really good question, John, because I was the queen of sending, like today we would say they were emails. But back then when we didn't have direct mail on the computer and we were literally just learning computers, I sent letters. I sent letters to all the local sportscasters that my family watched. So there was a guy in Chicago that worked at the ABC station. His name was Al Lerner. I sent him a letter saying I wanted to be a sportscaster, and he actually called my family's house. And we were eating dinner one night, and my mom turns around, and, you think of it, there's 10 kids at the dinner table, mom and dad. My dad worked like a factory job, and you don't call the house during dinner time. Back in the 70s and 80s, you just didn't do that. And the phone rings, and my mom turns around. She said, "Peggy, it's for you. It's Al Lerner." And we were all like, literally, the black and white TV is right there while we're eating, and we're watching the 6 o'clock news. And I thought, oh my God, Al Lerner from ABC7. We're watching the newscast right now. And he just said to me, "Keep it up. Get as much experience as you can. Go for it." He didn't do anything special except kind of give me a boost. I wrote a letter to Oprah. I was like, "Oprah, I want to be a sportscaster. What can you tell me?" And this is, again, back in like 1984. And she was like, "You go for it, girl. You do whatever you can." I just kept writing letters to people until someone told me, "You're crazy. Don't do it." And no one told me, "You're crazy. Don't do it." And when I got a job at the ESPN, I had just graduated from college. I was working 2 years at NBC Chicago in the programming department, and Warner Saunders was the news anchor, but he had just left sports, and he was hosting a show. He told the news director, "You should hire Peggy as a production assistant. She's got a great mind for sports. She just needs experience." So they hired me. And I was, just a gopher, basically. That was my first break. Then I went to ESPN 3 years later and worked the 6 p.m. to 3 a.m. shift. And you watch games and you log every single play of the game. Well, admittedly, listen, I knew basketball. I knew baseball. I didn't know football and hockey. I didn't know tennis. But when you're working 6 p.m. to 3 a.m. at ESPN and you have to log a game, you listen to the announcers, you write every single play down, and you learn the sport. And I would go to the producers and try to push my game as being the best game. Well, this was the Jordan era. They're all like, it's all about Michael Jordan and the Bulls, and I'm trying to push a Steffi Graf tennis tournament highlight that was going to be at the very end of the show. So I had to make them compelling and interesting and tell a story. And why is this a good story that should be told, in the same sportscast or newscast that Michael Jordan and the 91 Bulls or whatever. And that was really, really where I learned. And I went to a friend. He was an anchor at ESPN, John Saunders. And I would say to John, "I really want to be a sportscaster. I really want to be." He'd say, "Peggy, you got to keep working at it. You got to learn more about sports. You got to do as much as you can. And here's the best advice I give you. Someone hires you. You don't tell them you can't do it. You accept the job, and then you learn like hell how to do the job." And I got to tell you guys, women especially, don't take anything on until they're completely prepared for it. And we're over prepared. We have extra notes, and we're like you're not going to get anything past me. I'm completely prepared. A guy will walk in and be like, "Yeah, I could do this off the cuff," and they don't care. what that taught me from John Saunders was you learn on the job. Do not turn anything down. Convince them to give you the job, and then you learn how to do it. It was the best advice I had ever been given, because when I got to Chicago, I was pushing and pushing and pushing at stations, and they'd all look and say, you don't have any experience. You don't have any experience. And I'd say, yeah, but I know how to get the experience. Yeah, but I know how to get the answers. Yeah, but I know I'm going to get the interviews. And finally, someone just breaks down and gives you a job. And then you have every opportunity to prove that you deserve to keep that job.
I absolutely love that drive and motivation that you have. And like John mentioned before, a lot of sports media is still mostly male, even now in 2020. So was there ever an initial comment or situation, maybe from a viewer or ever like a coworker, that first struck you that you might not be getting viewed in the same light as everyone else?
Oh, Alyssa, that's a really good question. So I would say this. When I was in college, and I finally, by my senior year, I got to cover the SIU basketball team. And they were playing the likes of like David Robinson. He was playing for Navy at the time. And they had like the Bush Classic tournament down in Carbondale. And it brought a lot of bigger name schools. And I remember going into the locker room. This is when locker rooms were still open in college. Now, today, college locker rooms are not open to the media. They typically bring anyone that you want to interview out to a podium. And I remember going inside the locker room for the first, maybe one of the first times, I can't be sure. And I went up to ask one of the players about his game, and he was really offended by what I was asking him. And he started making fun of me, like I didn't know what I was talking about. Why are you talking to me? Why are you talking? And all I remember is that my very sarcastic 7-brother upbringing taught me to like smart aleck back. I just remember saying to him, hey, I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to him. And if you did better in the game, I actually would be talking to you. So give me the time and the place to talk to him. And I just remember like it was just a super bad, smart aleck type of remark, but it held my ground. And I remember the sports information director kind of looking at me like, okay, let's leave her alone. Like she can hold her own. And when I got to, when I got to Chicago, there were a couple of Cubs teams that were, I remember trying to get interviews with guys, and like one pitcher said to me, well, you got to give us incentive to do the interview. And I said, well, what do you mean by incentive? And there was, honestly, I'm telling you the honest God truth, I never at all felt like there was any kind of violation. It was more like they wanted to be paid off in a way. And I looked at him, I said, dude, like, I'm working at CLTV in Chicago. Like, we might have 100 viewers right now. Like, I can't give you anything. Like, do me a favor, do the interview. And it was just a matter of I started treating them like I treat my brothers and the way I talk to my brothers. And that became kind of my calling card. Like, I didn't take any crap. Make no mistake, I was offended at times, and I bit my tongue. But for the most part, I was pretty sarcastic and pretty much, like, threw everything back at them. So when people ask me, like, was anyone really rough on you? No one was ever like, you don't belong here. It was more a matter of, well, I'm sitting in the same room with you, so obvious. Like, it didn't really faze me. I did an interview with Terry Bevington when he was the manager of the White Sox, and I was at CLTV, and he came in studio. Could you imagine the manager of a Major League Baseball team coming in studio to these days? No way. He came in studio. They needed viewers. They needed, people to tune in. And in the middle of the interview, he said to me, this is really uncomfortable for me. I'm not used to being interviewed by a woman. And I looked at it, I said, Terry, I've been around the team the entire year. What do you mean? I'm just saying, it's like to hear a woman talking baseball. This is like, it's okay. It's okay. And I thought, oh, Lord. But it didn't deter me where I felt like, oh my God, I have to fight this. I kind of looked at it more like my stupid little cousin kind of thing. Like, whatever. Okay, move on. So maybe there were more instances that I don't really recall because I did not make them a big deal in my life. I moved on from them and kind of just let it roll off me.
Yeah, I think that's an incredible attitude to have, and especially in the times we live in, because whether we like it or not, social media has changed the world. Some say for the better, others say for the worse. But as a woman working in sports, it has clearly created a new medium for people to be cruel in the matter of seconds. Do you feel that has made it more difficult for women, or is it simply just bringing to light the ignorance that has always been there anyway?
Great point. I think it's brought to light the ignorance. I think we've seen a lot of that in our country the last few years, that it doesn't matter what side you're on. God, I remember my college teachers saying to us, you think you're so smart, quit trying to broadcast to the smartest people in the world. You need to broadcast to the dumbest people in the world, because unfortunately that's our audience. Our audience is not the upper third that is educated. They are the uneducated. I have never forgotten that. And let me tell you, social media has highlighted that. It's hurtful. It's personal. Yet I don't know anything about them, so I can't make a personal attack on them, but they can make personal attacks on us. Recently, I had a hole-in-one in golf. I'm 57 years old, right? I'm 57. I have twins who are 18 years old. I have a third child who's 12 years old, right? And I was celebrating a hole-in-one, which is like, oh my God, if you're a golfer, you just are like, it's the best thing in the world, right? So I post a picture on social media, on Twitter, and one of the comments now, literally I had probably 100 comments that was like, this is great, that's awesome, congratulations. And then there was the one guy who says, hey, old hag, you're a fatty, time to work up. And I thought, dude, I just hit a hole-in-one. And you're like calling me out on my age, my looks, my, body composition. Like, seriously. And I don't know anything about you. And I just kind of thought, you know what? Today, in 2020, I let it roll off me because truly I don't care. Now, I care enough to tell you guys about it, but I don't care. I don't care. Now, 10 years ago, it happened to me repeatedly, and I would answer every social media critic. I would answer everyone who said anything bad about me on Twitter. I would reply to them and try to explain myself. And I think, I don't know why we do that, but what I've come to understand is more women do that than men. We feel the need to be validated, and the men can just be like, he's an asshole, whatever, move on. I have learned now that you can't bring me down anymore. Like, you do it, and this is what I hate. They do it against women, especially, when you're most vulnerable. I would say out of college to the age of 35, before you have actually established yourself in the industry and you're still working really hard to get established. And people love to pick at you and make you feel vulnerable and make you feel like you're not as good as you think you can be. And now at 57, I'm like, I don't care. I don't care. You're not going to get to me anymore. 20 years ago, they did get to me. And 10 years ago, they did get to me. But I have learned it doesn't matter. You have to just keep forward with who you are, trust in who you are. And if enough people tell you, I really like the way you talk about sports, go with that. And do not, like the naysayers, it's okay. Criticism is okay, but we are all self-critics. Most of us don't need anyone from the outside telling us what we're bad at or what we don't look good at. So whatever.
I absolutely love how, that mindset you have, putting it behind you. I mean, I'm in that age range where I'm 30, so, I still get some of that, whether it's, people coming to Twitter or emailing me and trying to explain what I've just written, even though, I know what I'm talking about. Like, have you experienced something like that where, you have male fans coming at you trying to quote unquote mansplain sports to you?
Yes. And it's ridiculous. Gosh, Alyssa, I remember telling the Bears, oh my God, 10, 15 years ago, listen, I know I've made mistakes. Like, trust me, I know I've made mistakes. But let's not pretend that the men didn't make mistakes either. There's this horrible standard in broadcast journalism that you have to be correct 100% of the time. It's horrible because it's not possible. So when you make a mistake, it's devastating, and we all feel it. You don't need anyone telling you or pointing out that you were wrong about this. Yes, I get it. The best thing to do is to admit it immediately, post it, say it, and move on from it. Make a joke of it and move on. But when they repeatedly want to try to point out that, well, that's why you don't really know football. I'm like, dude, just because you played high school football in Chicago doesn't mean you know any more than I do, okay? Stop. You stopped at high school, okay? Like, that is not the greatest end all. We could all catch up to anything you learned from then on. And it really ekes me when guys try to do that, and they do it because it makes them feel better. So once you realize that, you have to brush them off. You have to literally brush them off like a little piece of dandruff on your shoulder and just, hey, oh yeah, that was there. Sorry. And move on. And move on, because there is no one that hasn't made a mistake. No one. It's all how you handle the mistakes and then move on from it. Like, don't let it get to you. I wish I had someone telling me that, and I didn't. And it took a good, 30-year career to figure it out. But don't. You're still young, and you're learning. You don't know everything about sports, but you have a pretty good mindset for it, and you know how to check it, and you have to go with that and continue to try to be better. And that's all it takes. Like, you don't have to answer to them. That's just ridiculous. I mean, please. We don't go to them and, critique their jobs. For some reason, they feel like they can critique us.
Peggy, obviously, you've been successful on radio, television, and now podcasting. With the game constantly changing and evolving, what have you had to do to stay on top of everything? Because things seem to be changing minute to minute.
Yeah, what's interesting? I remember, trying to remember when I was covering the Bears, there seemed to be a big shift in defense from the 4-3. I don't know, maybe it was during the Dick Duran era. And I had done so much to really understand football at that point. I didn't play, obviously. And I had really, really taken, I just love learning. I love when there's something I don't know and I can learn something new, especially about sports. And I remember there was a shift, and one of the coaches said something like, well, every few years in the NFL, there's something new. And I thought, oh, I need to pay attention to that. I didn't realize that. And, of course, then you had the spread offense coming in and things like that. So I made it a point of always asking coaches at some point every year, what are you seeing new in the NFL? Like, what's new? What have we not seen? You know, and they might say, oh, you know, now we're in a 3-4, or, you know, it's a spread offense now. You know, we have the RPO. And you learn, you kind of go, oh, okay, this is something I need to read up on. I need to learn more about this. They will tell you those things. So in all sports, I started asking the coaches that, because if I didn't catch on to it being something different, I wanted them to tell me, this is something that we've noticed and this is something that we have to pay attention to. So I started doing things like that. Otherwise, in terms of things that are changing, you know, what we're seeing now with the pandemic and with the coronavirus, and everything is being done on Zoom interviews, you know, this is a dream come true for a lot of teams. It's their way of being able to control their messages and control who's available to you. You know, I really, really relied a lot on my personality and my relationships to go in, and when we have an open locker room time and everyone's just kind of standing around, I would go and talk to player X and just say, hey, I noticed you're from Louisiana. You know, what was it like playing there? You know, were you recruit? And I would talk to them off camera, nothing on camera, and I would get to know them. And then before I know it, like, I'd find great stories like, oh, you know, whether it was a personal tragedy, or they'd say, well, my dad always coached me my whole life, or, you know, and then you are like, oh gosh, this is a great story. And then you can go back and do this story. Today, there is no access to the athletes. I know it's because of the pandemic, but I guarantee you, teams and leagues are going to continue as much as they can doing it this way, because they want to control the message. And teams are now having their own websites, their own TV stations, their own radio shows. They want the best stories in-house. They do not want them going out, you know, to Channel 5 or to the Tribune or the Sun-Times. And that's really, really disappointing, because that's what journalism is. Trying to find the best stories, find what makes someone tick, you know, just, and sometimes you only get that from just sitting one-on-one with someone and talking and getting to know them. And that to me is a shame.
Yeah, that's disappointing, because like you said, there are a lot of great stories out there to be discovered, and they're controlling that. But, you know, we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about what you're up to right now. So for some of our listeners that don't live around the Midwest, or maybe don't consume a lot of media, can you tell us what you're currently up to?
Oh, my gosh. So I have been hosting a podcast with my teenage son, Jason. Nice. It's called The Sportscaster and Her Son, and it is on Apple, SoundCloud, now on Amazon Music, TuneIn Radio. It's just about anywhere where you can get your audio. The podcast is available, The Sportscaster and Her Son. And when I semi-retired 3 years ago, I came home. My kids were freshmen in high school, and I thought, oh boy, you know, I'm missing everything. I need to be more available to them. I was traveling all the time, covering the Bears and the Blackhawks in the playoffs, and the Cubs and the Sox, you know, playoffs, World Series, everything. And I was missing a lot. And so I semi-retired, which meant I basically, you know, we kept the door open. If they want to use me, they can use me. But in the, you know, technically I was retired. And we started this podcast. It took a year for me to convince my son to do it. I have twin boys that at the time they were 16, and one of them was really, really into sports. And I kept saying, oh, you know, I'm kind of bored in this semi-retirement. Please, let's do a podcast. He's like, podcasts are for old people. I said, no, they're not. Everyone's doing podcasts now. Come on, let's do it. We'll talk sports. Finally, it took a year. He finally agreed. And now we are a year and a half in, over 11,000 listens. And we have a show in which we talk sports. And we get on great guests. We've had Brian Urlacher and David Ross and Hawk Harrelson, Spice Adams. We've had some really fun guests. We talk sports. We talk what's going on in sports. And sometimes we get into some parenting type issues because, let's be real, when you have a teenage son, they really don't want a lot to do with you. They are in their own life right now, and mom and dad are the least important things in their life. So you need to find ways to talk to them, and that's what I did. I was like, Jason, we can talk about sports, and he and I are so alike. We butt heads all the time. I finally convinced him, and now a year and a half into it, he is now a freshman at UT Austin, going into sports broadcasting, and it's been really fun. It's a lot of work. A lot goes into it, but we really try to keep the show topical, and it airs twice a month. You can download us, listen, rate us, and it's really been a great way to keep the lines of communication open between the generations, and at the same time doing what we both love, and we both love talking about sports. So, yeah, it's been really great. And I'm doing a lot of golfing, by the way, a lot.
What an interesting and fun and probably scary dynamic sometimes on that show.
Oh, yeah.
And I wanted to ask you, because you've seen so many incredible things happen in the world of sports throughout your career, and I really can't help myself. So I'm going to kind of put you on the spot here. What is the most memorable, or one of the most memorable, or maybe even your favorite event or game that you have covered throughout your career? And I know that is, asking a lot, because there's been so much. But if you had to just think of one off the top of your head, what do you think that'd be?
John, you have no idea how many times I have contemplated this question, because, think about, I started at CLTV in 1991, 92. I started Christmas, I want to say it was 91, Christmas of 91, and in January, the first week, if I'm not mistaken, January of 92, Mike Ditka was fired. I started at CLTV. I was hired on Christmas. I had never done a live shot in my life. And I had to go cover Mike Ditka being fired a week into being hired. And I was green. I was raw. I was, so inexperienced. And I just grabbed my media guide and I stood outside Hallis Hall in Lake Forest, and every person that walked in, I stopped them. I asked them their name. I asked if they worked there. I said, and then if it was someone that might be someone important, it could be a secretary, say, would you do an interview? And I was just doing interview after interview after interview. That to me was the, incredible moment, to be there for that horrible thing, obviously for Mike Ditka. But for me as a journalist, that was how I got my feet wet. That was amazing. But I would say the Jordan NBA championships, to stand on the sidelines in the final seconds when they were ticking down and seeing them throw the ball up in the air and hug each other in tears of joy, Scottie Pippen and Michael Jordan, and to see these iconic athletes be so emotional, I was incredibly moved. I will never forget that image. But I do have to say, in all honesty, my all-time, I was a basketball player. I wanted to be Cheryl Miller. I believe she's my age, so that's kind of funny that I wanted to be her, but I remember her being in Sports Illustrated and thinking, wow, I'm just like a dinky basketball player in Chicago, and, this woman's going to go to USC, and she's going to be on the Olympic team and all this stuff. And the Olympics for me were always to me, the most emotional moment for an athlete, because it was when everything, all the sacrifices you made throughout your lifetime, it's when it all came to fruition. And to see someone on a medal stand or pulling up short in a game and collapsing in tears, I felt it. I knew what they were going through, because it's what every amateur athlete has ever felt. You put everything towards that moment, and either you succeed or you lose. There is no in between. So I covered 3 Olympic Games from 1992 to 1996 to 2000. And I will never forget watching athletes on the podium to their anthem, crying with their hands on their heart, because you just felt what it was like to put all of those years into a sport and to finally succeed. So for me, I know it's kind of corny, but for me, it's the Olympics. I've covered incredible moments from the Cubs World Series, the White Sox World Series, the Bulls Championships. I covered 3 of the Bulls Championships, 3 Stanley Cups for the Chicago Blackhawks, the Bears going to the Super Bowl but losing. But really, it's the earliest moments in my career, and that was, working the Olympics and seeing the raw emotion of amateur athletes giving everything they had and either failing or succeeding.
Wow, that's so incredible, all of those emotions and all those moments that you've had in your career. And as someone that has covered Chicago sports for a while, what are your thoughts on the current Chicago sports teams?
Oh, God. Like, what the heck with the Bears? Like, seriously. You're like, oh, God. Like, really? I'm laughing thinking I have been gone from the Bears beat now for 4 years. 4 years. Like, well, they can't just get it together. Like, there's something wrong. There's something innately wrong that they cannot just. I actually liked the John Fox hiring when I was still covering the team. I thought, oh, smart. New GM, young GM, no experience, bring in the experienced coach. That backfired. Okay, whatever. Now it's a young coach, no experience, hardly any experience, play calling. I'm befuddled by this team. I don't even know what to think of them. So let's move on from the Bears, because I don't have any more insight than anyone else. And if anyone thinks they do, they're full of crap, because we can't figure that team out. No one can figure that team out. Okay, let's move on. Cubs and the Sox. Cubs, the window opened in 2015. They won in 2016. Now it's 2020, and you quickly see how quickly players can age, contracts can expire. And they are the quintessential veteran team that needs to win now, because they are going to change. The White Sox are very exciting. Wow, what they have done, and that they have really kind of cornered the Latino market, is a really interesting approach. It's exciting to watch. They're a fun team to watch. I don't know if they have what it takes. Obviously, no one expects it the first year. It's like 2015 with the Cubs. So you kind of think, okay, this is going to be their learning year. They look to be built for long term. So let's see, right? We thought the same thing with the Cubs, and it was only one World Series. The Bulls are, well, they're a work in progress.
That's
they're
very
fighting,
nice.
Yeah, they're fighting an old industry adage, and not catching up to what it's a players' league, period. And if you don't give in to that, no matter how much you may hate it, you're behind, and they're behind. And they have a lot to catch up with. But I like the hire of Billy Donovan. I think it's a really, really good hire, because you need the players to be on your side. But listen, Joe Madden was a players coach too with the Cubs, And that only goes so far. That lasts you 1 to 3 years before the players start tuning out, because then they get a new contract and then they become multimillionaires, and then they don't want anything to do with, any management or coach or anyone telling them anything like that. So, and the Blackhawks, I think, are in the same position. I think the Blackhawks are trying to hang on to Taves and Kane, and they're trying to, live off of the 2010, team, the Stanley Cup champions. 10 years later, what Chicago needs to learn overall is what New England has done forever. And you need to trade your best players while you can get a lot in return to continue your success, not drain it. And, it's like squeezing a turnip. You need to trade when value is high. And no team in Chicago ever does that.
Peggy, I want to go back to the NFL real quick, because I think that something is happening this Sunday that's very relevant to this conversation. This Sunday's NFL game between the Washington football team and Cleveland Browns will mark the first regular season game in NFL history that will have a female coach on both sidelines and a female official. Cleveland Browns Chief of Staff Callie Brownson, Washington assistant coach Jennifer King, and on the officiating crew, Sarah Thomas. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, you know what? I love it. For years, I kind of always poo-pooed the fact that people would say, you had to play the sport. You had to play the sport. You had to play the sport. Well, there's plenty of scrawny male sportscasters who never played the sport, who know just as much, or they're coaching, and they're very good coaches because they were very good observers on the sidelines. It's just a matter of time. It's great. They're all due. The respect that they're getting is well deserved. I hope it continues. Baseball has done a great job of putting women in the front office. And I'm not talking about, HR and PR and communications, and that's no disrespect to the women who are in those roles, because that's oftentimes the only roles that were available to them. But it's time to start putting women in roles that, listen, we all grew up playing sports. We're smart. We know how to adapt. It's time to just integrate everyone. Diversity is the best for all sports, all teams, all the way around. And we're not just talking women. We're talking minorities. We're talking brown, black, yellow, white. It's your best way of reaching people today is by having diversity in your front offices, on your sidelines, and your coaching staffs. I mean, give me a break. You look at some of these coaches and you're like, seriously? You're telling me a woman couldn't do this too? It's just ridiculous. And I'm glad to see that so many of them are being more open-minded to hiring women. Diversity is key in all aspects.
Peggy, this has been such an amazing conversation. And before we let you go, one of the most important questions I think that we can ask is, what would your message be to young women that are just getting started or want to get started in sports broadcasting? Why should they pursue it, and why should they stick with it?
Oh, really good question, because you know what? Don't pursue it if you don't love it already. Honestly, don't pursue it if you're looking to make a lot of money, because there is such a small percentage that makes money doing it. You pursue it because it's a passion. You pursue it because you love it, period. You don't pursue it. We've really run into some difficult situations with interns, I would say, in the last 10 years. And I think it was because social media got so big that everyone can be on camera. Anyone can do a stand-up. Anyone can, do an interview with someone on their own cell phone. That's easy. Now, tell me what you're going to give me that's something different. Tell me what's different from the guy next door. You and I are standing next to each other, and we're both going to go watch a Bears game. What are you going to tell that's different from what he's going to tell? He might tell you about the formations, the defense, the X's and O's. I might tell you about Well, earlier in the week, we noticed that there was a little discourse with the players. The quarterback and the receivers were having issues in practice. You need to bring your own perspective. What is that perspective? Maybe you are X's and O's. Maybe you're a person people. You have to be able to differentiate yourself. Don't do it to be on camera. Don't do it because everybody else has a YouTube channel. Do it because you love it. Do it because you strive to be better. Do it because you have a passion to know. You have a curiosity to find out why things are happening, and that you feel like you can educate the audience. Because let's be real, there's 1,000 YouTube channels right now. Is anyone telling you anything that you didn't know? Not many. So make yourself stand out from everyone else and keep pursuing what you think that is going to make you stand out and make you better than everyone else.
Incredible message. Peggy Kusinski, Chicago sportscaster, NBC Chicago, and host of the Sportscaster and Her Son podcast. Peggy, I want to thank you so much for being our first guest here on Pass the Mic. This has been just an incredible conversation.
I love it, you guys, and thank you for doing this, both of you. This is really, it's fun, and you're going to be able to highlight women who have personalities and show the backgrounds and where they came from. And guess what? Not everyone has the same path to this kind of industry and this job. So I love it, you guys, and it's been super fun. I really wish you guys all the best with the podcast.
Thank you so much, Peggy. It's been amazing talking to you, and we hope to talk to you soon.
Have fun, you guys, okay?
We'll be right back with our closing thoughts after this.
Hey everyone, Ryan Badgley from the Barfly Tailgate Show, and football season is kicking off, and I know you feel like I do, so to steal a phrase from WWE superstar Daniel Bryan, yes, yes, yes! And I also know you are like me and you love the work Allen Robinson is putting out on the football field, but also off the field. That's why we're so pleased to partner with the Allen Robinson Within Reach Foundation. Their work provides educational opportunities and resources to low-income and inner-city Chicago students to help put success within reach. How can you help? Immediately you can visit allenrobinson12.org and learn more about what they are doing and make a donation. If you can't donate money, can you donate your time? The foundation is always looking for volunteers. And please let others know about their great work. In the coming weeks, the Barroom Network will hold some fundraising efforts, and we hope that you'll be a part of those. And again, let your family and friends know. Now, how about them Chicago Bears? I'm so psyched up for this season. I think A-Rob has 100 catches and double-digit touchdowns. Now let's bear down.
Welcome back to Pass the Mic. John, pretty awesome interview to set off the new show, huh?
Oh my goodness, Peggy was fantastic. And some of those stories, that's what this show is going to be all about. Stuff that people probably have never heard before, like her conversations with John Saunders over at ESPN. The fact that she's covered incredible sporting events, the Bulls championships in the 90s. Can you even imagine being on the court during that? It's nuts.
It's incredible because hearing everything that she's gone through, and that's what is going to make this show so great is we're going to hear from so many different women. Obviously she's been doing this for a while and she's really accomplished, and we're going to be talking to other women that maybe are just up and coming, but listening to her talk about everything that she's gone through, from the start, how she first realized that's a job, because when she started talking about how she how she saw that, you could be a woman in sports. That's a job you could have. I mean, I had that same moment as a freshman in high school, realizing that is a job you can do. And, listening to all of, her words of encouragement, to me and to other women in this business. I mean, it was truly, truly incredible.
It was. And what I really appreciated was her willingness to be vulnerable, talking about how people did get under her skin every once in a while, and that she would fire back, and that it took a while to really be able to handle that up, even though she said past 35 and it still got to her. So I think that's important for us to spotlight as well, because I think too often when people shoot off a tweet or shoot off an email or any kind of comment online, there's a tendency to dehumanize some of these broadcasters and female voices in the media, where it's easy just to take a cheap shot and not think about it. She talked about that hole-in-one picture that she posted, and someone just for no reason at all was mean because they probably just saw a picture and wanted to be cruel about it. So I think it's important to show that these women are human, and that she's talking about her real human experiences, and maybe sometime people will think about that before they comment on something like that, because it's not, you're not just talking to a picture, you're not just talking to a video, you're talking to a real human. So hopefully we can bring that to light a little bit more. And but before we wrap up, I just want to thank everyone who tuned in to our first show. We hope that you will join us again and again and again. And I want to thank you, Alyssa, for not just being on this show, but for all your contributions to the Barroom Network and our other show, Buffone 55. It's just an easy and fun experience, and that starts with you being the brains of it all. So thank you for being a part of that show and being along for this journey as well.
And I couldn't ask for a better partner. We have so much fun doing that, and I'm so excited that we get to do this new project together. It's something that we're both so passionate about, and I can't wait to see what's going to come next. And you brought up our other show, so I might as well plug it. So please tune in. Tune in every week to Buffone 55, where John and I break down the Chicago Bears' most recent game and interview an expert on their upcoming opponent. There are also some epic rants from John that he somehow manages to squeeze into 55-second windows. John, you didn't have to use your voice as much today.
Well, that is the point of this show, and thank God, because I can only do that once a week anyway. It's too straining on my voice. I would not put myself through that twice a week. No one should have to do that. And before we head out, I want to remind everyone to give Alyssa a follow at Alyssa Barbieri and myself at JD Buffone. Also, follow the Barroom Network for all of our awesome shows. That we got sports, entertainment, and beyond. Check out our website, bearsbarroom.com. But for Alyssa Barbieri, I'm John Buffone. We'll see you next time on Pass the Mic.